of all, we should be able to compare how other gases are warming to CO2, because CO2 is the most abundant source of emission that we produce. It is not because naturally that is what is coming out of our activities. It's because we have actually built our life around activities that produces large amount of CO2. Okay? So that is the most abundant. The rest are the least abundant, so we compare them to CO2. So what we do is that we convert this using what we call the global warming potential, okay, of each gas, and then we get everything in CO2 equivalent. So when you see CO2 equivalent, it's not only CO2, it's other gases converted in the form of how much they warm compared to CO2, and everything added together, and we will see that as CO2 equivalent. All right. Now let's look at the basics of global warming, okay? And then we'll look at the results of our assessment. So the sun gives us light. Okay, light comes from the sun and is incident on the earth. The earth will absorb about 47% of the radiation that comes from the sun. After it has taken this energy, it emits the energy, and the energy was supposed to just simply go back, right? But what happens is that we have put excess amount of greenhouse gases here. So this energy that is leaving the earth in the form of heat goes up there, and they are trapped by the layer that we've put out there through our activities. And this heat stays here and warms up the earth. Okay? This is what we call global warming or greenhouse effect. Now, why should a university be a concern? Okay? A university is a city on its own. Higher education institutions shouldn't be seen as just a place where you go to learn and acquire a degree anymore. Now, higher education institutions are very complex environments that you can use to develop and test solutions. So for many years, we as a university have contributed significantly to the country, and even to other West African countries, and to the global discourse of climate change, helping different institutions to decarbonize. Okay? That is called our carbon handprint. So there's footprint and there's handprint. The handprint will be what the activities you do that will go out there to help someone reduce his footprint. It's not what you do here that reduce your footprint. That will be mitigation. We'll come to that. We have conducted research. We offer advisory services, training. We train you to go out there. And when you are in the world, that impact that you make, which leads to reducing the global impact of climate change, becomes our handprint. And our handprint is great. We've been doing this over the years. But we also have footprint, because you look at a university, we have labs. And these labs sometimes run throughout the day and throughout the night. We have a population of over 90,000 on campus people. We have buildings, we have air conditions that are always on. We have electricity, many activities on campus. All of them depends on energy. And all of them uses some form of energy that generates emissions. Because of that, the carbon footprint of a university is equally important. Okay? So we need to look at that. Secondly, if we use a university as an example to decarbonize, we create models that not only other universities can use, but the entire country can follow. Because KNUST, for example, is a leader. People see us as leaders in science and technology, which is just the case, right? Leading by, first of all, measuring our emissions and using data-driven solutions to decarbonize will set example for many aspects of our society to be able to follow. Now, where do we start? What we did was that we started with the College of Engineering. And we used a bottom-up approach. Because if you want to use a top-down approach, you need a lot of administrative approvals. And the main challenge why many universities around do not want to look at their carbon footprint is the administrative hurdles that you have to go through, and then the financial hurdles. Okay? We didn't have any of these two. We didn't have money, and no one funded this project apart from our own projects within our lab. And then secondly, we didn't have the support of authority to go out there and mobilize data. So we used the bottom-up approach. So in the College of Engineering, we counted 2,255 devices. So every dot here represents a place that we have walked to and personally picked data. Okay? 10 buildings were covered, 33 laboratories were covered, 689 commuters were surveyed in the college. We grouped our assessment into 3. Okay, so we looked at scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1, direct emissions, we covered generators. We use refrigerants leak from air conditions, campus vehicles running within campus. Under scope 2, which covers mainly energy, purchased electricity, we looked at the grid electricity for fans, lights, and computers. The challenge is that the grid system within campus is not decentralized. So the College of Engineering doesn't have its own meter that we can go and read to find out the energy consumption of the college. So we can only get that data by looking at the gadgets and the equipment that are used. And that is exactly what we did. We counted every one of them, looked at their power rating, how long they are used every day, and we used that to generate the data that we have today. Then scope 3 covered everything else. Okay, I don't want to go too much into the technicalities, but we covered commuting, goods and services, that is procurement, and waste. There's no single institution in Africa that has covered all these 3. In Africa, the 2 institutions that have publicly declared their carbon footprint have only covered scope 2. They haven't covered scope 1, they've not covered scope 3. Okay? For the first time, if this is published, this will become the first time a college within a sub-Saharan African institution has covered all 3 scopes in one assessment. Now, the assessment was not done just anyhow. It wasn't done by our own standards. We used really established standards. So for each standard that we use, they are all publicly available. The models are available. The data that we use are all available. And so they can be verified, right? Because for emissions assessment, validation is as important as the measurement itself. Okay, so we've made sure that every source of emission identified, the right assessment methodology was used to compute the emissions. Now, the total emissions of the college for the 2024-2025 academic year, we found was 1,927.40 tons of CO2 equivalent, covering all the scopes. Now, if you want to picture this, right, if you want to visualize it, this is equivalent to the yearly emissions of about 420 cars. One college out of 6. All right. Now let's go a bit down and look at the breakdown. Now, out of this number, scope 3 accounted for 46%. Scope 2, 28%, and scope 1, 26%. So it is only 26% of this value that is emitted right directly within our campus. 28% is coming from our grid electricity that we buy, okay? And 46% is coming outside of the university. Now let's go down a bit into scope 3. Because of scope 3, as you can see here, scope 3 is contributing the highest. So we wanted to go in there and look at what is really happening in the data. Under scope 3, we covered employee commuting, student commuting, supply chain, and waste. Employee commuting contribute 57%. Student commuting contributed 31%. And I'm going to show some exciting data here, right? And supply chain emissions contributed about 10% and waste about just 1%. You can see the breakdown here, right? So in total, scope 3 emissions accounted for 896 tons of CO2 equivalent of indirect emissions. Then we break the scope 3 down a bit. I just wanted to focus on supply chain. So under supply chain, electronics and IT purchases contributed the most. If we just go back to the entire data set, the total value, and break it down into the various aspects of campus, buildings accounted for 32.5%, staff commuting 28.1%, student commuting 15.3%, labs, college vehicles, and power generators. Please remember these first four. Buildings accounting for the most, staff commuting, student commuting, and labs. Now, our air conditions don't look like they contribute so much to climate change because they cool us down, right? But the same machines that cool us probably are warming the planet very fast. In the global higher education institution carbon accounting, usually they neglect emissions from air conditions or refrigerants completely because the institutions reporting their emissions are in the temperate regions. They don't need air conditions. They need heating. So if you read their reports, you find out that most of the contributions there is coming from the heaters. You come down here, we don't need heaters. We use air conditions. Okay? So there isn't a single study out there that you will find where air conditions were included. This will be the first time that we've really looked at air conditions. And so the literature will be enriched by the study that we have done here. All right? It will put some highlight on air conditions and cooling as one of the significant things to consider if you are a higher education institution within the tropics. All right? And truly, it contributes so much. You can see that it contributes about 288 tons of CO2 equivalent, which goes to, if you come back here to the data, that is all in the buildings here, contributing to about 32.5% of the emissions. Now, the exciting part of the data. We surveyed 159 staff within the College of Engineering. We have a student population of about 10,226 that we considered. Okay? Out of this, the emissions per capita, that is the emission per person for staff, was about that of 13 students. Okay? Because we found out that 68% of students actually walk to campus. They don't use vehicles. So their emissions is 0. You can clap for yourself if you like. Okay? Whilst for staff, every one of them used some form of transportation and they came from a bit far. Okay? So, and secondly, staff have offices. Students don't. They only use the same buildings that we accounted for. Staff have power. They have fridges in their offices. They have air conditions and other gadgets within their offices. And so if you account for all these, their footprints goes very high, and the emissions per capita, or the carbon intensity per staff, was 1.54 tons of CO2 equivalent per year, whilst that of a student was 0.12 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. Okay? Now, here is the case. If KNUST want to reduce their scope 3 emissions, we have realized that staff commuting contributes the most. Staff also have the power to make decisions and to change things within campus. So the leverage is actually falling on staff, not on students, right? Because those who emit the most should take the more responsibility. We should take more responsibility, and actually we have the power to take more responsibility if we want to reduce our Scope 3 emissions. Comparing KNUST's, just using the College of Engineering, comparing our carbon intensity, that is emissions per person. If we take the average of staff and students, combine everything, and we look at the emissions per person, it will be about 0.18. The global average is 2.67%. So we are still very low on emissions compared to the rest of the world. Okay? This doesn't mean that we shouldn't decarbonize, but it tells us that the situation is still under control and we can be able to do a lot about it. Now, this is what I want us to look at. Our emissions is low. Many people are of the view that because we are not emitting so much, even in Africa, we don't really need to talk about emissions. We should just concentrate on adaptation. Yes, it's good. Because we are at the receiving end of climate change, adaptation has become very necessary, and we should invest a lot in it. But should we wait for the emissions to get out of hand before we think about it? No. It takes a long time for developing countries to actually gain expertise and mobilize resources to make a change in any aspect of the society. It's not just about greenhouse gas emission and its assessment or decarbonization. Okay? So the best thing for us is to actually start early. The globe is moving. Countries have moved on. If we start now to even learn how to measure, to decarbonize, to abate, regardless of how slow we go, in the end, it will contribute a lot compared to waiting for it to get out of hand before we start to do something about it. So what can we do about it? First of all, let's look at our air conditions. We use air conditions every day. We can't stop using them. But probably we can do something about the gas we put into the air condition, and we can also build better models to track the leakage. Okay? We can invest in more efficient air conditions because we realized that air conditions was one of the highest source of emissions in the tropics, cooling. Then, for the students who are already working, let's encourage it. Let's encourage more students to work. About 68% of them are working. But most importantly, let's encourage staff to also work. Okay? We have student shuttles. We don't have staff shuttles. It is important for us to get staff shuttles too. All right? So that when I'm leaving the college, for example, to come to the library, the options available to me should be using a shuttle or walking. That will help us to become more active, more healthy, and reduce our footprint at the same time. Okay? We as staff can set better examples to encourage the students to work more. In the end, it keeps all of us healthy. I'm also suggesting that we decarbonize most of our labs with solar voltaics. Okay? Because during our assessment, we realized that for most of our labs, they operate only during the day. Secondly, most of the labs uses only small equipment. The big equipment are used only once a while. Okay? These small equipment consume very less. So it is very possible to actually photovoltaics. First university in sub-Saharan Africa to know its carbon footprint for sure. Right? Now, once we have done that, we would have put ourselves here. The first thing we need to do is to measure. That is where we are today. Once we finish the measurement, we can set a target of how we want to decarbonize. Then we reduce our emissions to the point that we cannot reduce anymore, and we offset the rest. Okay? If we do that, and let me repeat this, At this point in time, what KNUST really can do is to look at the data and set a net zero target. It's a great thing if a university can boldly stand in public and say, KNUST want to achieve net zero emission by 2035. It's a big thing. Okay? If we do, it will help us to attract more funding and partnerships in this area, because we've put ourselves out there that we want to make efforts to get to a stage where we will become an example in terms of climate action to the rest of society. It will help build our credibility. We will become a living lab for research within the sub-region. It will help shape Ghana's climate policy because we can contribute more. It will help us to lower our energy bills and also attract talent and students. We as a university contribute to the climate discourse through these means. We contribute talent, research, living labs, policy, and partners. But this is where I want us to look. Okay? For many years, universities within the developing countries like ours have contributed research, mostly, and they end up in thesis. This is not only in Ghana, many developing countries. In Ghana, we have tried everything when it comes to development. The only thing we haven't tried is to partner universities to spearhead our development. We have never tried that aspect. There has never been a time within our history that we used university research, evidence-based research, to drive development. We have never done that. Probably this is the right time for us to do it. Not only within the climate change discourse or climate action, but in every aspect of our society. If we can bring universities on board, and universities can lead by evidence, measurement, insight, directions, policies, to influence and direct how things go within society, we will move on faster, because that is what other developed countries have done. Sorry. Okay? So let's move. Now we are doing so well. We've moved from, let's say, research and thesis alone to prototyping. So you go to most of the labs, they are prototyping, right? Where we need to get to is going from prototypes to spin-outs, where the prototypes are being commercialized and becoming businesses. A few research projects have achieved that within our campus. What we have not really tried are these two: building living labs on campus and making the whole campus a living lab. Living labs are just like a place within campus we are using for experimental work, at the same time living in it. For example, we can pick a wetland down here at Katanga. People are living there, people are working there, students are living their normal life, but we are collecting data there and using the data to improve what is going on over there. This room can become a living lab, where we have sensors here collecting data on air quality and other parameters. Whilst we are using the place normal, we use that data to improve the design and the occupancy of this room. Okay? So that is where we need to be. We need to move from just research, thesis, and prototypes to the place where we can actually run the whole university as a living lab. And that will require that we bridge the gap from here down to where most of the universities in the world are currently. This is where most of the big universities that you know are currently operating. This is all I have for you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Yen Adams Sokama Nguyen. Please, we are moving to our next session, which is the Q&A session, and it's going to be about 20 minutes. So please, it's going to go in this order. 3 questions will be asked in a row, and then our speaker would answer. Then before the next 3 after that. Please, any questions for our speaker?
Doc, thanks so much for letting us know where we stand as an institution, even though the sample is just a subset of the whole institution. My first question is, can that subset be used to generalize carbon footprint in the university? Again, I want to know, is there any study about Ghana, the nation, if there's anything on us about our carbon footprint? Thank you.
Then I'll just stand here and take all the questions. Okay, thank you for the question. The College of Engineering is about 1/8 of the whole university. So it's not something that you can just multiply by 6, the data that we've collected. Secondly, colleges have different kinds of buildings. And, I mean, the structure of colleges are not the same within the university. When it comes to buildings, it comes to commuting, the number of students, number of staff, structure of buildings, the age of the buildings even counts. And many of these parameters that goes into the models are not the same for all the colleges. So there are some, I mean, now we have the methodology. So extending it to different colleges wouldn't be difficult. But I don't think it is statistically right for us to simply just use the population as a proxy to extend it. And yes, Ghana reports its greenhouse gas emission to the UNFCCC since 1990. So we are one of the best countries when it comes to doing that. The EPA reports our emissions every 2 years or so to the UNFCCC. All right. Now there's one thing that I didn't add. The students who helped me to collect the data, one of them is here. Christy, stand up and get some. Yeah. And then our staff at the Net Zero Carbon Emission Lab, please, all of you, you've been very supportive in this. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we also want to use this to, extend our love for one of our staff who unfortunately passed away last month. He actually led the data collection since last year. Mr. Edmond Pepra Ankama. May his soul rest in perfect peace. All right. Please, more questions.
Thank you very much. We are very happy about how you have surrendered through your global for the day. What KNFD carbon footprint. My first and foremost question will be, is your work completed or ongoing?
Please, it's ongoing. It's not complete. We've just covered 1 out of 6 colleges. Less than that, actually. Yeah.
Carbon dioxide. But per your work, you highlighted some few solutions to it. But I didn't hear about afforestation, especially looking at our campus. I think KNUST, we are doing well, and we have a lot of trees to battle this very challenge that we are discussing. So maybe we need to take into consideration. The last but one is there. I think we have done a lot. We are the library and have taken record of most of the student thesis. I won't end. I won't talk again. So let me complete my questions. The things we have had, some of them, when you go through the, as we were just completed, if the national or maybe the politicians have considered it in a way, maybe Ghana, we could have gone far. Sometimes when you look at how tedious the whole work is, moving from north to south, gathering data, by the end of the day, it ends in our shelves and repositories. It's very, very disturbing. But you did mention that we are not, that's where we have not taken notice to make use of them. So I will challenge your people and you yourself that how do you throw out these very successful stories through the thesis to the politicians for better implementation and for the national development that we are all looking forward to. And the last but one, now what we are looking forward to, the question I'll end it. We know now the electric cars are coming in. We are talking about emissions where you are blaming employees. And this is more than, for me, I have a car. So my contribution is more than 13 students per campus, which is very astonishing to me. Now, do you advise for the electric cars, since it is coming into the system, maybe it will solve some of the challenges we are discussing? Thank you.
In fact, several proposals have been there and they've been working around it. They are considering replacing the current shuttles with electric vehicles. But it takes some time, especially given the capital investment that goes into it. So they are working on that. But we need a solution that will help staff to buy electric vehicles at a cheaper, probably a more affordable rate. Now, because of the electric cars produced by China, they are not as expensive as they used to be. In fact, now an electric car, the cost of it is just almost the cost of the used vehicles that all of us import to drive. Okay, so we can work around that. That is a good solution. Now let's look at afforestation. Okay, afforestation is very important. Unfortunately, we are depleting our forest within campus. So for those who have been here, I haven't been here for long. I came here in 2019. But for those who have been here for many years, in fact, they feel that we've not lived up to expectation because the university used to be very green compared to where we are today. With that said, every institution that I have been outside this country, the first thing people talk about is the green cover of our campus. They will say, oh, you are from KNUST, your campus is one of the most beautiful places I've been. So our campus is very beautiful. One of the things we should do in this work is that after we've assessed our emissions, we should assess our sinks, the carbon sinks available on campus. That will help us to be able to declare a net zero target quickly. Okay, so the experts at NACHU and CO, they have already been working in this area. They can help us to assess the emissions that every carbon stock on campus, including the shrubs and the lawns, can help us take from the atmosphere. And we can use that to balance our emissions from the buildings. That works. All right? Then let's go back to your other questions. I've forgotten them. Oh, okay. Yeah, with that, I think that is completely out of my hands. When it comes to anything politics, I'm not really good at it. Okay? What we can do as researchers is to conduct research like I've done, try to propose solutions, and then let management take that up with the politicians. We are hoping that we can get to some point like the developed countries, where institutions, like for example, KMA, could sit with us direct to design solutions for Kumasi. That is what we want. Okay? Let's say KMA wanted to solve problems with problems about flooding, and they could come to campus here, sit with professors, and we could design solutions and test them on campus and deploy that to the rest of the city. That is how people work out there. So this is what we want. But the structures are not that easy. And me standing here, I'm a small man. I don't think I can do much. Okay. Okay, that one, we need the slides back. Please put up the slides and let me try to see if I can explain that. Yeah, you see this. This is the earth. It's not only Africa or Europe or America, right? This greenhouse gas cover is the entire earth. So it doesn't isolate. Okay? But here is the case. Down here, okay, if the climate change goes in such a way that it affects crops, it affects us more than them. Because they import food. They don't grow them within their society like we try to do here, for many of them. Okay. Then you can extend that to other aspects of our society. And then additionally, when the same impact goes to all of us, they can respond to it faster than us. Okay? They have the structures, they have the funding, they have everything to respond faster than us. That makes it a bit difficult for us to compete with them when it comes to the vulnerability. Yes, please. All right.
My problem has to do with, don't we have a way that we can do to mitigate it rather than adaptation? Because I know climate change will be a persistent issue for a long time, but can't we find a way to also mitigate it? And also, there is one other thing to concerning the ways that African countries do to regulate how we emit in our economy. I think Europe has been able to come up with a regulation where if you go outside there, you go and produce, when you send the product to their economy, they would have a way to determine whether you were able to, take care of the carbon emission. Yeah, so can a Kenya University campus set maybe a living lab, as you mentioned, that we can also develop something that Ghana can also detect and charge people who are also producing highly carbon emitted product and import into Ghana? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So first, let's look at the adaptation and mitigation. That reminds me, another study that we have to do in KNUST is to assess our climate risk. Right? We have, in terms of adaptation, we need to know our risk. Then based on that risk, we can design our resilience. Okay? But the challenge is that for climate change, it's here with us already, and it's changing every day. So it's like firefighting for everyone. In that case, you don't think about prevention. You think about survival, right? And that is where the adaptation comes in. So we are trying to adapt to the new situation we found ourselves in whilst reducing emissions so that future climate change will be reduced. Okay? So that is the first part. The second part that you are looking at, putting a premium on emissions, is something that we can do. But for KNUST, what I will propose is that we declare a green zone. Okay? We have a large campus, 16,000 kilometers or so. We can declare a part of that campus as a green zone where a car can't go there and anything that has emission can't go there. That becomes an opportunity for researchers to study the area, to find out the benefits that we can gain from a green campus even before we attain one. Okay? So if you go there, in that case, if we declare the place green and you take a car there, you'll be charged. You take anything there that emits, you'll be charged. Okay? But another thing we can look at in terms of the question you are asking is green procurement. Green procurement. In which case, we as a university will say, any company that is buying or selling from us, we want them to produce a certificate that shows that the activities they are involved in is not destroying the environment before they got what they are bringing to sell to us. So they'll bring some sort of certificate, ESG certificate, before we bring them on as suppliers to supply goods to us. It's one of the things we can do easily. Okay? And that will push people to decarbonize, especially companies who want to work with us. Thank you. Yes, sir.
What contribution does waste generation make to You can help me. 1. Oh, okay. And in terms of waste, what's it called? If you have to advise us in terms of priorities, which areas would you consider or would you let KNUST prioritize on in terms of carbon footprint? Yes, yes.
That we found. We produce them in large quantities compared to the rest of the waste, like organic waste. Yeah. Okay. For library, I think you use air conditions, you use power, and all that. You could. It's a bit difficult because you have many people coming in to study. We can't say that we'll put off the light, but we can look at energy efficiency. For example, if you are using this and you believe that its efficiency is not good compared to what is new out there, we can replace that. Okay. For example, we don't need all these lights here, so we can optimize the lights that we need in a room. There are experts who do that. They will look at the design of this room and determine the exact number of bulbs that we need here to make everyone enjoy staying here. That may reduce these bulbs significantly. It cuts down the footprint too. So stuff like that can be done. And then in future, if you want to build a new library, then you can build a sustainable green library where we will use the natural sunlight to read, and probably we need less energy to sit in the rooms. That will be something we can do. Okay. Since my boss is here and he's in our college, I don't know what to say. Okay, so for staff, our footprint mainly comes from commuting. And I don't think there's much we really can do at this point in time, because if you ask staff, for example, to cut down their commuting footprint, it means you have to find them places on campus to live and walk. Bicycle in Ghana, that is quite dangerous, right? That's dangerous. Even motorbikes isn't easy. So let's get shuttles for staff. Just 1 or 2 shuttles on campus running for staff will help us a lot. Because if you are coming to our college and there's a shuttle here, you could come with that. So you could come with maybe 3, 4, 5 staff instead of all of you driving one vehicle down. And when there's a function, the shuttle will pick all of us to the function. So we don't need to drive individual cars, right? So we'll be encouraging mass transport within campus when we are here. When we are going home, we can all drive our cars home, right? So that's one thing we can do. And then individually, putting off your air conditioning when you are going out is within our reach. We can do that. Putting on the lights, the air conditioning in your office before you leave will be a great way you can contribute to the university's footprint. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, but we didn't include it. Bush burning is a big thing. Last year or so, we had some bush burning around the Mango Road. We didn't account for that. But when you burn carbon stocks like trees, it reduces the carbon stock the carbon sinks we have on campus, and by so doing is contributing to emissions. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So we should probably train them not to burn, but rather use the organic matter to do, rather use the stocks to produce organic matter or something like that. The burning isn't good for anyone. It's not good for them too. You know, when they are burning, they don't go far. They stand close to the area and they inhale the gases, which isn't good for their health either, right? But they need some training because most of them are not staff here. They just work around the campus. Yeah. Don't worry. Worry about how you ask it.
Yeah, so in your presentation, you mentioned, you made mention of the fact that you would be happy if the university as a whole will stand somewhere and then declare a zero, yes, targets by 2035.
That was an example.
Okay, all right. But in all your submissions, the answers to most of the questions that are coming, it looks like most of our activities emit some of these carbons. So is it possible for a university like us to meet that target if it should be set? Thank you.
First of all, net zero is not zero emission. Net zero is not zero emission. So look at it this way, okay? If you know your emissions, let's say we know our emissions, and it's 1,927 tons of CO2 equivalent. That is our emissions today. We declare a target that we want to achieve net zero by 2035. This is just an example, okay? What we have to do is to look at this 1,927 tons of CO2 equivalent, how much of it we can reduce genuinely by the technology we have today, the resources we have, and our current situation. Let's say we can reduce 1,000 out of that, okay? We have declared that by 2035, we want to get net zero. So by 2030, our target is to reduce the 1,000 because that is what we can reduce. Then from 2030 to 2035, the 5 years, we have exhausted all options to reduce our emissions. So now we offset the remaining emissions, which we call residual emissions. We offset that by buying carbon credits or planting more trees, or let's say investing into carbon capture and other options that can remove CO2 from the atmosphere, and we will use that to account for the 927 tons that is left. If we do that, we have achieved net zero, but we can continue to emit the 927. No, not at all. Not at all. It means that your emissions is balancing your mitigation. All right, so it's possible. We can declare 2035. I'm using 2035 because we have 2K35. Yes. And I love the 2K35 document, so we can insert that in. Yes, it's out. Authority can declare that we are going with that. It should be fine. Okay.
And I saw old cars being transformed from the mechanical engine to electronic cars, being done here on campus by the engineering department. Now I want to know if your team and management can sit down so that they can assist staff with old cars so that they can transfer their engines, their old engines, instead of going to buy or replace them with a used engine from abroad with this new electronic system that they are building over here so that it will also reduce the emission.
Yes. The mechanical engineering department are doing an amazing job on that. Every year, they build these things with their students. So basically, they take an ICEV car, remove the engine, and retrofit it into an electric vehicle. Okay? Most of these technologies that they develop over there are not highly funded. Most of these students work on it as a student project. They invest so much into it, sometimes their own, and the staff put in their investment in it. If we want to spearhead this as an institution, and we find some sort of support for them, they could do it in a larger scale. In which case, we can use some of our vehicles on campus as a starting point. There isn't a problem doing that. Let's say those old pickups we have in the college, we give them to the department and say, hey, we are bringing some funding, convert them to EVs, let's use them on campus and see how it works. Great. If it works, we can tell the rest of the world, come and see. We can convert even our old cars to run as electric vehicles. So we can do the same for you, and that helps us to help others too. Right? So I agree with you, we can do that.
Can it be turned to something positive, or can we turn it into something positive, or can it be used for other stuff? It's always negative whenever I hear about it.
Yes, you can. It's called CCU, carbon capture and utilization. The CO2. I think a very good example would be Coca-Cola. When you drink Coke, there's CO2 in it, right? Yeah, so that is CO2 being used for a product that you can consume. CO2 has been used in building materials, in production of ammonia, and so many other materials out there. Okay? But currently, the technology available is not sufficient to actually convert the CO2 we are producing, which is in large quantities, to finished products. Okay? There are some technologies within the labs that are very efficient. But most of these technologies out there that can convert CO2 to useful products also consume a lot of energy. So in the end, you are using so much energy to convert CO2 into a product because you want to avoid CO2. It defeats the purpose, right? So as scientists continue to optimize these things, in the future, I think we can be able to extend that a bit further.
Just a quick question here.
Sure.
Do you have a strategy in reducing this? And if you do, maintain it, what are some of the challenges?
A strategy. There's a policy 2 years, or is it last year? I made a contribution to one policy that was being developed. They reached out to me and asked if I could read through and make some comments, which I did. I haven't received the final document to see if it has been published or not. But there were discussions around this to come up with a policy, a decarbonization kind of net zero policy for KNUST. So they are working on it.
You pay more. Exactly. So you pay more. Some of these things, they've done it and it's working well for them. And people respect that. Can this be done in Ghana? Okay.
If anything can be done in Ghana, it is KNUST that can do it. We have the technology, we have the people, we have all the brilliant people like you, so we can do anything. Okay? I believe that strongly. Okay. All right. Exactly. Mm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, he can do it. He might do it. A small green zone to just start for, let's say, the next 2 years will be a great place to start. Mm. You drive in there, we get some small money for the university. People will drive in anyways, and we will charge them.
They are. Go on the zero emission. The activities will be possible since those towns around us have their own activities going on.
The net zero emissions is not about the emissions within the atmosphere. It's about what you are taking out of your activities. That is what we are computing. Everyone living in the world, their emissions go into the same atmosphere and it's distributed to all of us. We are just concerned about what KNUST is contributing as a result of you and I, the movements we make, and the things that we do on campus, our activities. Okay? All right. Thank you. That's all. Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Please, let's call on our Deputy Librarian, Dr. Edward Mensah Bote, to give us the closing remarks. Thank you.
Doc, thank you so much for educating us. For most of us, we are not aware of what actually we are doing around and how we are contributing to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. A few things were said, and it distracted me so much, I want to mention them. It says that we contribute more due to our activities. Africa also contributes less, but is affected more. My question then is, what can we do as individuals, as students, as staff, and as workers, some of them who are not workers but are all around here working? What do we do to help reduce this carbon dioxide that is being emitted within our offices and within our lecture halls? What can we do? That is what we need to think about. If we all do what we expected to do as individuals, I believe so much that the net zero that is being envisaged, we can work towards achieving it. It may not be a zero, as he said, but we'll end up achieving something that will be very meaningful. So all of us would have to put our hearts together, do what it takes to let us get to that particular point. On that note, I say thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mensah Bote. Thank you all for your attention, your patience, your questions, and engagement at this Science Friday. This is what Science Friday is all about. It's all about turning knowledge into dialogue and action. Before we close, please, there's a QR code at the back of the auditorium. It's for suggestions and feedback, and even if you want to do it anonymously. Your suggestions are always welcome here. We also have all our resources and information shared here today would be on our website, the KNUST Library's website. So please, you can have access to it once it's there. Our next Science Friday will be in a few weeks. The details will be posted on the KNUST Library's screens and our social media pages, platforms. Let's give one more round of applause to our doctor for his presentation. Yeah. And then to the URO team, Thanks for providing us with photography and reportage for our Science Friday. And then to our e-learning center team for providing us with live streaming for us today. Yes. Please, let's invite Mr. Asaf to give us the closing prayer for today. Yes.
Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us today and also having this nice opportunity to listen to one of our doctors teaching us how to cope with whatever we are going through and how to handle ourselves so that whatever we are doing will be beneficial to all of us instead of harming ourselves. We are leaving this hall. We humbly put before you that you protect us throughout the day, the rest of the hours that is before us. We come before you through the office of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. This session too has been recorded, captured on our NCEL channel on YouTube. Yes, you can have access to it through. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Please, let's not go anywhere much. We have to capture the moment. Every Science Friday has a different, outlook, and I'm really happy for today's Science Friday. So after when we are, our session is over, we'll all come to the front here so that we can take a picture and capture this Science Friday, 6th edition of Science Friday. Yes, but please, yes, and then afterwards, there's some tidbits after. All right. Yes, please remember that the KNUST libraries remain your gateway to knowledge, innovation, and academic excellence. And then on behalf of KNUST libraries, thank you all for coming. Have a safe journey, and let's see you all here next Science Friday. Thank you very much.